Does body count matter? Now, if you're in the manosphere, that debate has pretty much been settled long time ago. But however, I'm not gonna talk about that number, but I'm gonna talk about something else more serious, alright? The way I see someone with a high body count is that they have an addiction. Think of them like an alcoholic or a drug addict, for example. And then when they try to get rid of that addiction, they're gonna face a lot of challenges. So this video will just pretty much highlight how screwed up some people can become, and let's just say that the number means a lot more than you think. So yeah, right here I have a video from Zoe Stories. He learned I've slept with 50 plus men. Now he's cold, distant, and won't even cuddle me anymore. So yeah, please take note.
You know that saying about how your past always catches up with you? Yeah, turns out it's not just some old person's warning to scare you straight.
Alright, you know, time is like an arrow, alright? Your past is the tail, your present is, the middle of the arrow. The future is where the arrow will go, right? If you have a screwed up past and you're not doing anything about it in the present, your life is headed for the ground. Trust me for that.
It's real. 10 years of marriage down the drain because of stuff I did before I even met my husband.
Now, for this video, spoiler alert, I've watched this beforehand. We're gonna assume that she's telling the truth, alright? I know this is a bit of a big assumption, but what I want you to see is that even as you try to get rid of that bad habit of sleeping around, if you make one mistake, they're gonna come back in, right?
I'm Erica, 32, and my life just imploded because Benjamin found out I've slept with over 50 guys. Benjamin and I met right after college when I was 22. He was this super sweet, kind of shy guy who worked at the office across from mine. We'd bump into each other getting coffee, and eventually he got the courage to ask me out. What made him different was how untouched he was by everything. He was literally a virgin when we met.
Yeah, as you guys can see, we are starting to see like these two already have like very different views about virginity. So yeah, values really matter in this case.
Meanwhile, I'd been around the block, like way around. Between 50 and 60 guys, if I'm being honest, which apparently I should have been from the start.
Yeah, as you guys can see, someone tried to hide their past, which, let me just say this upfront, it's not gonna end well, right? I'm a guy that, sometimes hides my past. Now that I have, fully embraced it, I'm like, yeah, whatever. I'm just gonna try my best to, try to get my arrow in a better direction than where I was headed before. So yeah, I'm just gonna try to stop hiding my past at this point. So
I never told him about my number. It just seemed unnecessary. Yeah, what good would come from him knowing I'd been with multiple guys at once, or hooked up with men twice my age in public places, or that time with my ex's uncle? God, I was such a mess back then. But that wasn't who I was anymore when I met Benjamin. The second I saw him, something clicked, and I knew I wanted something real for once. When we started getting serious, he asked about my past relationships, and I kept it vague. A few boyfriends, nothing special. Not technically a lie, right? The boyfriends weren't special, and I just didn't mention the random hookups. Besides, he seemed so happy thinking we were on somewhat similar levels of experience. His face would light up thinking our connection was this rare, magical thing. Why ruin that? We got married after 2 years, bought our starter home, got a dog, and everything was perfect. I became this whole new person, reliable, faithful, the kind of wife his mom approved of.
yeah, it's at this point I have to remind you that we'll take her words at face value and assume everything she's telling right now is the truth, alright? Because if we assume she's telling lies, it's gonna get very complicated very quickly.
I even made friends with all the other wives in our neighborhood. Between us, some of those women are total snooze fests with their recipe swapping and minivan discussions. But I play the part. Nobody would ever guess what I used to be like. I never cheated on Benjamin. Not even when Jason from my workplace obviously wanted something to happen during that conference in Phoenix. Or when my ex Ryan hit me up on Facebook saying he was in town. That's worth something, right? I chose Benjamin every single day for 10 years. But apparently that doesn't matter if you've got a past.
Well, apparently, the past will come back to haunt you. And if you're not, as I said earlier, if you're not careful, it will break up your marriage, even though you're trying to get away from said past, alright? And this is where things can get a little bit crazy, right? All the bad habits, when you pick up an addiction, you probably picked up like a few friends along the way. And, you probably develop some memories, some feelings, some, things that normal friendships will do. And then when you try to get away from said addiction, a lot of people just keep their friends around and, instead of partaking the bad habit with them, they just, spend less time with them, which is, not to say bad, but as you guys can see later on, it'll come back to haunt her. So beware, spoiler alert.
All it took was one stupid game night with my college friends. Benjamin had met some of them before, but never my core group, Courtney, Tyler, and Melissa. I should have known better than to mix those worlds. We were drinking, laughing, playing Never Have I Ever like we were still 21, when Tyler said, "Never have I ever slept with more than 10 people." I didn't think and just put my finger down with Courtney. Benjamin looked at me like I'd grown a second head. Then more questions came. Never have I ever had a threesome. Never have I ever hooked up with someone significantly older. And with each one I answered honestly. I watched my husband's face completely transform. Courtney, who never could keep her mouth shut, saw his reaction and pulled him aside to explain.
Yeah. You didn't ditch that loudmouth friend of yours?
I don't want peace. I want problems, always.
So now she's coming back to, wreck your marriage. Which is why you gotta pick your friends properly. I know this might sound a bit, harsh. But if you partake in bad habits, you're gonna pick up some bad friends. In air quotes. And then they'll come back to wreck your marriage when you're trying to get away from said bad thing, right?
As they talked in the kitchen, I sat there knowing my marriage was about to change forever. Benjamin's whole thing was finding someone pure like him. Not necessarily a virgin, but someone who saw intimacy the same way he did. Special. Meaningful. Not just something you did with strangers against the wall of a club bathroom. If only Courtney would shut up for once in her life. When they came back, Benjamin wouldn't even look at me. We left immediately, the car ride home so silent I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. Part of me wanted to scream that this wasn't fair. Why should what happened before him even matter? Another part knew I'd messed up by hiding it for so long. But mostly, I was terrified of losing the life we'd built, the only truly good thing I'd ever had. When we got home, all he said was, "Were you ever gonna tell me?" I started crying, explaining that I was afraid of losing him, that I was a different person now, that the past shouldn't matter.
Yeah, let's just say that you're a different person now, but you still kept your old groups of friends, so there's always that inkling of the past you, right? You can try to hide that part as best as you can, or you can embrace it and just try to get rid of it, right? But, this is why once you get into an addiction, it's so hard to break it, because your brain has been wired that way, your social life has been redeveloped that way, and then your budget, every part of your life would have been, changed by that bad addiction that you had. And to find out what other parts of life have your addiction wrecked will be very difficult, and that's assuming you're even aware of them in the first place. So yeah, So while you have changed as a person, you remain faithful. You didn't throw out the friends that were not to say responsible, but you didn't throw the friends that you had when you were engaging in said bad behavior. So
He just stood there, like he was looking at a stranger. Then he grabbed a blanket and went to sleep on the couch. I still can't stop replaying that night in my head. The way everything unraveled so fast makes me sick to my stomach. Through the doorway, I could see Courtney talking animatedly, while Benjamin stared at the floor, his shoulders slumping more with each word. What was she telling him? About the professor I slept with for a better grade? The time I hooked up with a married father of 3? All those one-night stands where I didn't even remember their names the next morning? The next few weeks were a nightmare. Benjamin went through this cycle. Icy silence, then bursts of questions I didn't want to answer, then more silence. Was I just some project for you? The nice guy you settled for after having your fun? I tried explaining that he was different, special, but the more I talked about my past, the more distant he became. Did you ever even love me? He asked one night, his voice breaking. Or was I just convenient? That one hurt. Of course I loved him. I still love him. But how do you prove that to someone who now questions every memory you've shared? 3 weeks after game night, I thought things were improving slightly. Benjamin started talking to me about everyday stuff again. Bills, his job, what to have for dinner. It wasn't warm or loving, but it was something. Then I realized what had really changed. He'd stopped caring. There was this emptiness in his eyes when he looked at me now. Like I was just someone he lived with, not the woman he once couldn't keep his hands off. Our bedroom became this cold, uncomfortable place. Benjamin started going to bed after I was asleep and getting up before I woke. If I tried to touch him, he'd stiffen like I was a stranger. When we did have sex, which became rare, it was different. Mechanical. Like he was just going through motions. He stopped looking at me, stopped making sure I was enjoying it. Afterward, he'd turn away immediately instead of holding me like he used to. One night, after another session where he barely looked at me, I finally broke.
yeah, that's because he thought that you saw intimacy the same way. But come to find out, you didn't. So yeah, this is what happens when you have a high body count. Right? So oh my gosh, this is why you gotta be careful about the habits you pick up. Right? Let's just say I have a severe caffeine addiction, which is why I call my channel the Caffeine Addicted Cat. So yeah, I'm gonna suffer something bad if I don't break the caffeine addiction soon. But all I know is that to break that caffeine addiction, it's gonna be quite difficult. I would admit it as much, alright? So I will try to cut down on my caffeine consumption from 3 cups a day to maybe 2, then slowly to 1, right? Because right now, I drink 3 cups of coffee a day, which some of you may be willing to point out that it's not as harmful as other habits out there, but let's just say I'm not always gonna get 3 cups of coffee a day, alright? If I'm very lucky, I may just get like, if I'm lucky, I might actually just get tea every now and then, or maybe an energy drink, which is not as filling as say coffee, right? So I gotta try to cut down the caffeine consumption.
What is happening with us? I demanded. You won't even cuddle me anymore. He stared at the ceiling for so long, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, I used to think what we had was special. That the way you responded to me, the way we connected, was something unique.
Yeah, he probably thought that you were a virgin like him. And come to find out that
You've been had. You've been took. You've been hoodwinked. Bamboozled. Led astray. Run amok.
50 other men has been inside you. So he can only imagine all the other DNA
Now I know you've done all this with dozens of other guys, some of them strangers. How am I supposed to feel? That was different, I insisted. It was just physical then. With you, it means something. Does it? He asked, his voice flat. Or am I just the guy you settled for when you decided to change your image? I started noticing other changes too. Benjamin began working late, or spending weekends helping a friend with a project. He installed a password on his phone. The irony wasn't lost on me. Now he was the one with secrets. I wanted to confront him, but what right did I have? I'd hidden things for years.
Now you probably know this saying, what goes around comes around. You try to hide something, the people you attract will hide something from you. So yeah, so be careful about hiding things from people.
Launched Operation Win Benjamin Back. Pathetic, I know. But I was desperate. I started with the obvious, seduction. I bought new lingerie, planned a fancy dinner, put on his favorite playlist.
Is that all you have? Seduction?
You know what, dear? You were young and stupid. Now you're old and stupid.
Not an apology.
Came home to candles, wine, and me wearing practically nothing.
Yeah, sometimes, oh my gosh, I don't know how to put this into words. This seems like this body count addiction has actually made her see the world through seduction. You know the saying, if everything looks like a, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? So far to get the body count, she had to be seductive, right? So right now all she had is seduction, and let's just say it won't work on this guy right now. All right, what might probably work is an apology that you hid it from him for so damn long.
For a second, I saw desire flash in his eyes before he shut it down. What's all this? He asked, his voice carefully neutral. I thought we could have a special night, I said, trying to sound confident while dying inside. Just us. He looked around at my efforts, then back at me. Special, he repeated, like the word tasted bitter. Like just us and the ghosts of 60 other men? I felt like he'd slapped me. That's not fair. Isn't it? He asked, grabbing a beer from the fridge instead of the wine I'd poured. You know what's really unfair? I can't even look at you without wondering if every move, every sound you make, is something you perfected with someone else first. If anything about us was ever really ours. He slept in the guest room that night. I sobbed into my pillow, humiliated and heartbroken. But I didn't give up. I tried a new approach, acting like everything was normal. I chatted about work, made his favorite meals, asked about his day, all while ignoring the elephant in the room. That strategy lasted about a week before Benjamin called me out.
What he needs now is an apology.
What are you doing, Erica? He asked one night. Why are you acting like nothing happened? Nothing was working. Benjamin remained distant. Our home felt like an Arctic tundra, and I was running out of ideas. Finally, I decided on direct confrontation. We need to talk about this, I said one evening. Really talk, because I can't live like this anymore. We sat at our kitchen table, that same table where we'd shared thousands of meals, made plans for our future, played board games on rainy Sundays. Now it felt like a negotiation table between strangers. I love you, I started. That has never been a lie. Maybe not, he conceded. But how would I know? What else haven't you told me? Nothing. My past is my past. It doesn't affect us now. He laughed without humor. Except it does. Every day.
The one thing you can do now is apologize that you hid it for so damn long. You see what I mean now? That once you have an addiction, you start to see the world through a certain lens, right? When all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail to be hammered down, right? Now suddenly you forgot you have other tools in your disposal, such as an apology in this case.
It affects how I see you, how I see us, how I see myself. Do you understand what it's like to suddenly realize your entire marriage is built on a foundation of half-truths? 2 weeks later, I noticed subtle shifts. Benjamin started staying out later. His wedding ring occasionally disappeared from his finger, only to reappear the next day.
How do I put this into words?
He took calls in another room, his voice dropping to a whisper. The bathroom cabinet suddenly held a new cologne I hadn't bought him, small things that added up to something I didn't want to face. I checked his phone while he was in the shower. I know. Hypocritical much? The woman who kept secrets for 10 years suddenly demanding transparency. But I was desperate. There were texts from someone named Holly, lots of them. Enjoyed coffee today. Thanks for listening. You deserve better. Nothing explicitly romantic, but intimate in a way that made my stomach knot. When Benjamin came out of the shower, I was sitting on the bed with his phone in my hand. His face hardened immediately. Going through my phone now? He asked, voice cold. Who's Holly? I shot back, beyond caring how I looked. He snatched the phone away. A friend, someone I can actually talk to. Talk to about what? About how terrible your lying wife is? My voice cracked with anger and fear. Benjamin ran a hand through his damp hair, looking exhausted. Yes, Erica, about how my entire marriage turned out to be built on lies. About how I don't even know who I'm married to anymore. By getting close to another woman? Is that your solution?
Yep. He found out that
You've been had. You've been took. You've been hoodwinked. Bamboozled. Led astray. Run amok.
His laugh was bitter. That's rich coming from you. Now you care about boundaries? Now you're worried about loyalty? I never cheated on you, I shouted, jumping to my feet. Never. No matter what I did before, I have been faithful every single day of our marriage. Physically, maybe, he said quietly. But you cheated me out of making an informed choice about who I was marrying. You stole 10 years from me, Erica.
well, to some people, if you have sex outside of marriage, that's adultery. Alright? So even though you may have slept around for the past few years and then you married this guy and you have never cheated after that, let's just say some people have already considered you an adulterous person at that point. So yeah, some people can broaden the definitions of adultery a little more than usual.
Fight escalated from there. All the tension of the past months exploded into the worst argument of our marriage. I accused him of using my past as an excuse to cheat with this Holly person. He called me a manipulative liar who'd trapped him into marrying someone he never would have chosen if he'd known the truth.
Then how else would you describe your current situation now?
Are you sleeping with her? I asked, my voice small. He looked me straight in the eyes. No, but I've thought about it, and I hate myself for that, but I've thought about it. No, but I've thought about it, and I hate myself for that, but I've thought about it. I need some space, Benjamin continued. Real space, not just sleeping in different rooms. I'm going to stay with Aaron for a while. You're leaving? Panic rose in my chest. Everyone knew once someone moved out, they rarely came back. As he zipped up his duffel, reality finally hit me. Please, I begged, grabbing his arm. Please don't leave. We can work this out. I'll do anything. He gently removed my hand. That's the problem, Erica. You'll do anything to keep me, except the one thing that mattered, being honest from the beginning. I was afraid, I cried. Afraid you wouldn't love the real me. He looked at me sadly. I never got the chance to try, did I? Then he was gone, the front door clicking shut behind him. I collapsed on our bed, my bed now, and sobbed until my throat was raw. Somewhere in my mind, I always knew this day might come. That eventually, the truth would surface. That's the thing about lies. They're like time bombs, just waiting to explode. Benjamin was gone for 2 weeks, the longest 2 weeks of my life. I called, texted, emailed, mostly silence in return, except for brief messages about bills or mail. I tried everything. I sent long, emotional emails explaining my past, why I hid it, how much I regretted my choices. I had flowers delivered to Aaron's place where Benjamin was staying. I even drove by a few times, pathetically hoping to catch a glimpse of him. Once, I saw him getting into his car with a woman I assumed was Holly. She was pretty in this wholesome, natural way, The exact opposite of my carefully crafted image. They were laughing about something. I hadn't seen Benjamin laugh in months. I called Melissa, hoping for support, but she was surprisingly cold. "What did you expect?" she asked. "You built your relationship on a lie. I love you, girl, but even I knew this would blow up eventually." After 2 weeks of silence, Benjamin finally texted, "We need to talk. I'll come by tomorrow at 7. When I opened the door, the sight of him hit me like a physical blow. He looked different. Not just the new haircut or the clothes I didn't recognize, but something in his posture, his eyes. He seemed more centered, more certain. While I'd been falling apart, Benjamin had been finding himself. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he started, his voice steady. "About us, about what happened, about what I want going forward." I held my breath, too afraid to hope, too afraid not to. "I talked to a therapist," he continued.
I think he's getting a divorce.
"She helped me understand some things, about why your past hit me so hard, about what it means for us." And I could barely get the word out. Benjamin looked directly at me, his gaze unflinching. "I can't do this anymore, Erica. I want a divorce." The world tilted sideways. Even though I'd been bracing for this possibility, hearing
Guessed it. By the way, I've not watched beyond this point. I don't know whether I mentioned this beforehand, but it seems like I gave you guys the impression that I watched through this entire video. So, yeah, I only watched like, okay, fine, I watched more than half of it, alright?
the words out loud made me dizzy. "Benjamin, please." He held up a hand. "Let me finish. I've thought this through carefully. It's not just about the number of men you've been with. It's about the deception. For 10 years, you let me believe something that wasn't true. You watched me build a life with you based on false information. That's not something I can get past." "People change," I cried desperately. "The person who did those things, who slept with all those men, that's not who I am now." "If that were true," he said quietly, "you would have told me yourself. The fact that it took a drunken game and an old friend to reveal the truth tells me everything I need to know about who you still are." "And Holly?" I couldn't help asking. "Is she part of this decision?" A flash of anger crossed his face. "Don't make this about her. This is about you and me, and the fact that I can't trust anything about our relationship anymore." "Are you with her now?" I pressed, self-destructively needing to know. He sighed. "We've grown close. She understands what I'm going through. But no, we're not together. I wouldn't do that, not while I'm still married. Unlike some people, I believe in honesty in relationships."
Ouch.
The dig hurt, but I deserved it. "So you'll be with her after the divorce," I said flatly. "I don't know what will happen with Holly or anyone else," Benjamin replied. "I just know I can't stay in this marriage. I've already talked to a lawyer. I'll be fair in the settlement. The house, the accounts, we can split everything equitably." I laughed bitterly. "How generous. You get to walk away with your conscience clear while I'm the villain who ruined everything." His expression hardened. "Is that really how you see this? After lying to me for our entire relationship, you still think you're the victim?" Benjamin moved toward the door. "My lawyer will contact yours. I hope we can keep this civil." "That's it?" I asked, voice breaking. "You're just walking away?" He paused, hand on the doorknob. "You know what's ironic? If you had told me about your past from the beginning, I probably would have still loved you. It would have been hard to hear, but at least it would have been honest. It's the years of deception I can't forgive, not the actions themselves." With that final twist of the knife, he was gone. Again. But this time, I knew he wouldn't be coming back. The divorce proceedings moved quickly. Benjamin was true to his word about being fair. We split assets evenly, sold the house, divided the furniture. Every interaction was conducted through lawyers or brief, painfully civil emails. It was like we'd never shared a life at all, like the past decade had been erased. I moved into a small apartment across town, took a transfer at work to avoid running into mutual friends, and tried to rebuild. But starting over at 32 is harder than starting fresh at 22. I'd grown used to being Benjamin's wife, to the comfortable life we'd built. Now I was just Erica, The real Erica, with no more masks to hide behind. 6 months after our divorce was finalized, I saw them together at the grocery store. Benjamin and Holly, shopping for dinner ingredients, moving together with the easy familiarity of a couple who fit. They didn't notice me watching from behind a display of cereal boxes. He looked happy. Genuinely happy, not the forced contentment he'd maintained during our last years together. He was laughing at something she said, his hand resting casually on the small of her back. It was like watching a knife twist in my heart. I abandoned my half-filled cart and fled to my car where I broke down completely. Not just because he was with her, but because seeing them together made the magnitude of what I'd lost painfully clear. Benjamin had moved on. He'd found someone he could trust, someone who gave him what I never could, honesty from the beginning. The worst part came 3 months later when I ran into Melissa at a coffee shop. I'd been avoiding our old friend group, but this encounter was unavoidable. After awkward small talk, she mentioned that Benjamin and Holly were engaged. They're perfect together, she said, either oblivious to or uncaring about my pain. So authentic, you know? No games, no secrets. It's refreshing. Each word was a dagger, but the final blow came when she added, casually stirring her latte, "Plus, she's pregnant. They're due in January." I spiraled after that. Started going out too much, drinking too much, hooking up with men whose names I barely learned.
Yeah. A part of me just thinks that the addiction hasn't really been broken yet. Alright? So, yeah, she just went back to her old ways because that's what's familiar to her. Alright? So this is why men don't like women with high body counts, because once you get an addiction and shit hits the fan, you just go back to what you're familiar with. And when you start hooking up, that's what happens.
Falling back into old patterns. One night, drunk and self-destructive, I texted Benjamin, "Congratulations on the baby. Guess you found someone worthy of starting a family with." His response came the next morning, "Erica, please get help. I don't want this for you. We both deserve peace." Even after everything, he still cared enough to want me to be okay. That kindness broke something in me that anger couldn't reach. Because he was right. This path I was on would destroy me. I was punishing myself for losing him by becoming the person I'd tried so hard to leave behind. That text was my rock bottom. The next day, I called a therapist. Started the painful process of facing who I really was.
I don't want peace. I want problems, always.
Not the wildness of facing who I really was. Not the wild girl from college, not Benjamin's perfect wife, but something more complicated. Someone who had made mistakes, who had hurt others, who had lied to protect herself. Someone who needed to learn honesty, not just with others, but with herself. It's been a year since then. I'd like to say I'm completely healed, that I've found peace with my choices and their consequences.
Do I think she has been completely healed? Maybe. But if you ask me, honestly speaking, 32 years of bad habit, or at least, I don't know how many years did she go around hooking up with guys. But, you know, if it's a 2-year process, it's gonna take at least 2 years to completely heal from said process, right? If she was, I don't know how long she has been in the hookup phase, but let's just say it'll take as long as the amount of time she spent in the hookup phase to break it later on in life. So yeah, unless her hookup phase is falls within a time frame of a year, and she spent 1 year healing, I'm inclined to believe that she's completely healed. But then again, she'll have to sleep with 50 men within that 1 year, by what she has admitted. So I don't know what to think of this. I guess I'll continue.
But that would be another lie, and I'm trying not to tell those anymore. The truth is, I still wake up sometimes reaching for Benjamin. I still drive by our old house occasionally, Even though strangers live there now, I still feel the ache of what could have been if I'd just been brave enough to be honest from the start. Benjamin and Holly had their baby, a little boy. I saw the announcement online. They look radiantly happy in the photos. A perfect little family, built on trust and honesty. The life I could have had if I'd been a different kind of person. I'm dating again, cautiously, taking it slow, being upfront about my past from the beginning. The good, the bad, the ugly. It's terrifying, but also freeing. Some men walk away when they learn about my history, and that hurts. But better to lose them on my terms with the truth out in the open than to build another relationship on lies that will eventually implode. I see now that it was never about the number of men I'd slept with. It was about the decade of deception, the foundation of lies our marriage was built on. Benjamin could have accepted my past if I'd given him the chance. What he couldn't accept was discovering that the woman he'd loved for 10 years had never fully existed. So here I am, starting over, trying to build an authentic life. No more masks, no more convenient omissions, no more running from my past. Just me, flawed, complicated, still learning, facing the consequences of choices made long ago. It's not the life I planned, not the future I thought I'd have, but it's real. And after a lifetime of pretending, maybe that's what I needed all along.
To which, Erica, I wish you all the best on that journey. So on that note, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and this is like a live reaction as I watch this video with I didn't write a script this time round, so yeah, and I'll see you guys next time. Leave a like, comment and subscribe. Bye bye.